No, it's not, they said, upon seeing that strange title. They'd heard of Firewatch before, perhaps they'd even played it in days past and knew of it as a beautiful game set in the unending American wilderness. The setting of the isolated forest practically cried out to be used for a horror story, but this game didn't answer the call. Did it? Had their own minds deceived them, pulled on the strings and disconnected itself from the horrors seen by its own eyes? Was their own belief a lie? They couldn't help themselves. They had to know what that strange YouTuber, who's lost a lot of weight recently, long way to go, but he's proud of the progress, meant by such a title. They took a shallow breath, curled their eyebrow like one Dwayne Johansson of old once did, and clicked.
Campo Santo announced Firewatch in August of 2014, and between then and release it's been known more as a desktop wallpaper and a collection of art pieces than a video game and a story. It's not surprising, considering the game itself was born out of a single painting by artist Ollie Moss. This image was all we had to go on for ages. It's like that image of Spider-Man 2. It was all we had, except for the knowledge that there were some very, very skilled veterans of the industry working behind the scenes, whittling their spears, getting ready to poke holes in us. If you were anything like me, you didn't know what the story of this game would entail until you were already in Two Forks Tower facing that summer of isolation. Was it a walking simulator? A fucking dating simulator? A card game? Was it a cutesy, wholesome tale like A Short Hike or Papers, Please? Or was it something darker? According to Steam, it's a first-person mystery game where adults talk about adult stuff. Yeah, keep your snotty kid away. Let them play the young'uns games like Minecraft and Roblox. What the fuck? To the unsuspecting gamer, it doesn't look that scary, and I'm not going to sit here and gaslight you into thinking that Firewatch is the PT or the Silent Hills that we never got. It's not the scariest game in the world, nor is it trying to be. At its core, it's about escapism. It's about finding comfort in an existence outside of your life. But I really do believe that this theme is a truck stop on the way to the horror genre, and it leans into that intentionally and beautifully in a lot of ways. I want to talk to you about this game today because despite it being one that apparently you can't replay and you can only experience once, I've replayed it into the double digits now, and part of me hasn't left the Shoshone since that first spine-chilling playthrough. So sit back and enjoy, grab your plate of food. I'm about to start rambling. Horror is a fickle thing. When it's done right, it's one of the absolute greatest forms of entertainment. It's easily my favourite form of anything. Games, TV, movies, books, food. The problem is it's rarely done right. Tell me the last horror movie you watched that was more than okay. Go look up your favourite horror movie on IMDb and tell me that it's got more than a 7 out of 10. Oh wait, I'll give you 50 quid. I won't. It's not to say that they all suck. That's really not the case. And using IMDb as a form of higher knowledge is funny. It's comedic. I didn't know there were jokes in the script this early. But it does lend a bit of insight to the feelings and the thought process of the people on the internet. I feel like failings in these projects often come down to two main factors, and that's bloatedness and trying to take the easy route. Horror as a genre works best in sprinkles, little gentle sprinkles that don't overpower you. It's like seasoning in food. You're supposed to keep it to a minimum and never use garlic. Part of why I think PT Silent Hill is such a memorable and remarkable experience is because it's short as fuck. It gets in, does what it needs to do, shits your pants and gets out. You can start it and be gawking at Daryl's face before your flavourless chicken is out of the oven. See also Host and Iron Lung. It's a big reason why I think PT is so powerful and so many of these other projects, be it games, TV shows or movies, run out of steam. You can only rely on cortisol and adrenaline for so long before the audience gets numb to it. Side note, Smile could have been an absolute Hall of Fame horror movie if it ended a few minutes earlier, and instead it's just okay. I will not elaborate at this time. Obviously, exceptions to the rule. The Shining is it's like 2.5 hours long. It's sick. Point being that horror as a genre doesn't need time to work. You ever heard the shortest horror story in the world? The last man on earth sat alone in a room, and he heard a knock on the door. That shit gets under the skin. It shivers the timbers. Show me a one sentence or two sentence action thriller or romantic comedy. You can't. Being short allows for horror to focus on its premise, its setting, or its idea, whatever that may be, in its entirety without being diluted by answers and by shit like additional studio storylines. It allows for the viewer slash reader slash player slash fucker to have their mind fill in the gaps. Imagination is a powerful thing, maybe the most powerful thing that we're capable of. It's a foundation of horror, and it's easily more powerful than anything a director or a producer or writer can put in front of your face. Stephen King, one of the biggest names in horror, knows this. Nightmares exist outside of logic, and there's little fun to be had in explanation. In a horror story, the victim keeps asking why, but there is no explanation, and there shouldn't be one. The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest. He's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. It's important for the creatives behind the curtain to foster an environment where your imagination can take over, where it can do the heavy lifting and make you scared with the building blocks and the little subtle moments and pieces that the director, writer, producer do put in front of you. Because what your brain comes up with will always be scarier than some monster of the week. Shout out Midnight in Doctor Who, one of the best episodes. Take the Mandela Catalogue, one of the most beautifully made pieces of the most unsettling and chilling genre of horror, in my opinion, analog horror. That shit is 15 minutes long, and if you finish it and you don't feel as unsettled as Jesus in a strip club, you're lying and you have a shit credit score. Admittedly, the ones that we've been seeing more recently have been less scary, but it's exactly what we were just talking about. We're getting the answers. We've seen the creature now. We're understanding them more, and with those understandings, that fear, that emotion inside of you goes away. The imagination and the fear of it is slowly going away as they move towards storytelling rather than shitting my pants. That's absolutely fine, and they're still great productions, but if you only ever saw those first 15 minutes, those images and those questions would stick in your head for a whole lot longer. Firewatch is quite comfortably a one-session game. You don't need several days to complete it. You definitely don't need weeks to complete it. It's like, 3 hours? If you've got the time to watch a movie, you almost definitely have the time to start this game and finish it. This absolutely lends a hand and provides evidence to the case that the storytelling is just so compact and efficient, compelling and powerful. It's a massive feat by the writers and the creators to have us bond with these characters as quickly as we do and become as invested in their lives as we are, and it leaves so much room then for the mystery plot and for that case and that unknown mystery to sort of percolate and build up. Okay, let's move over to that other point that I mentioned, taking the easy route. What I mean by this is falling back on human innate reactions to get a rise out of someone, to provoke that fear out of them without really putting in the work to earn it. Stuff like phobias comes to mind, like spiders get used a lot, but the main one that I'm going to talk about is jump scares. Jump scares are the biggest culprit of this. I can count on my fingers how many good and effective and well-earned jump scares there have been. Hill House comes to mind, the care home, the nursing home in Alan Wake 2. It's not something that's exclusive to games as a fault. It's movies and TV shows, all of them do it too. I'm sure you can tell I'm not a fan of jump scares. The massive majority of the time they're kind of just thrown in there without having put the work in to cultivate an atmosphere of fear and dread where they can get those feelings out of you authentically by vanilla rather than taking the easy route and just using a primal reaction to make you jump. You know, you can't help being jump scared. You can help feeling that innate fear that you feel in something like the Mandela Catalogue, or when you're walking about on your own in the middle of the woods. It's completely a physical reaction and not a mental one. And true horror exists on the mental plane, the 747 of the mind. This is where the horror of Firewatch resides. The isolated forests of the Shoshone make for this amazing place to escape from your troubles, from your problems, from your life, from society and all its people. And those exact reasons are why it's such a perfect place. It's such a perfect setting to cultivate an atmosphere thick as porridge, fostering deep paranoia. Out there, Henry feels like the last man on Earth. You feel like the last man on Earth. So what do you do when there's a knock at the door? There are a ton of building blocks and foundations you can name when it comes to creating a horror story or horror environment or horror. You can rely on dread, on mystery, whatever words you want to put in there. But for now, I'd like to mention a few that always tend to come to mind when I'm either trying to create the horror experience or when I'm experiencing one. We got powerlessness, imagination, solitude, maybe like suspicion. These all make themselves present and known through Henry's time in isolation in some way or another, and all three shout to the player or the viewer loud and clear through the environment alone. You don't have backup, you don't have other lookouts. The only other person you talk to is on the other end of a radio. She can't help you. No one can. No friends. Well, Alexa, skim Turt Reynolds across Jonesy Lake like a fucking pebble. Henry might be able to beat up muggers and flapjacks, but what's to stop someone getting the upper hand on him in the middle of the woods? These forests foster paranoia right from the off. On day one, you have an encounter with another person and all they do is look at you. Nothing else, they just look at you. You don't know their intentions, but thanks to the direction and the feel of the scene, you can't help but think that their intentions aren't good. Delilah's completely right in how she responds to Henry though. He's outdoors. There's no reason for him to immediately think that this other person is a Jason Voorhees. It's entirely plausible that it's just another hiker walking about in the woods, as you do. Hello. It's completely plausible that that person poses no danger. But you tell me you felt that when you saw them in the woods. You didn't. You probably felt like you suddenly had your pants down. Your first encounter with other people in the game down by the lake, you're the one in charge, you know? They're there posing a danger to the forest, and you're there to keep the forest safe. You have the upper hand. You are the authority in that situation. You can walk back to your tower with your head held high. Then the sun goes down and you encounter this person with the high ground and a flashlight who doesn't want you looking at them. And then suddenly every bush, every tree, every bit of cover is a potential hiding spot for this person, this mysterious figure. Suddenly you don't feel like an authority. You feel like prey. And then you get back to your tower. A friend of mine, Levi, recently asked me to help out with his uni project, which was based on music in video games or interactive media, whatever the term is recognized by the church. He wanted to just have a chat with me about music in video games and particularly how music is used for world building and atmosphere within video games. And this very moment in Firewatch was the first moment that immediately came to mind, followed by like 6 other moments in quick succession and about an hour-long tangent between the both of us just gushing over our favorite games. With seconds between that encounter with the stranger and this moment, the tension goes from about a 2 to like a 12. And then you do start to wonder, like, is this a horror game? Nobody told me it was a horror game. Well, I did. Dumbass, it's in the title. You return to your tower to find the typewriter on the ground at the bottom of the staircase, surrounded by broken glass. And then a steady beat begins to play. The wizards behind the curtain want you to know that you don't have the upper hand here. They want you to feel that fear. They want you to feel powerless. You are not protected. I'm going to replay this scene now with a different piece of music to try and invoke a different emotion. Just bear with me. This scene could have just as easily been a sad and emotional one. Poor Henry's had a tough old time of late. He's just come back from threatening the youth of today.
They've got to learn.
Now, as soon as he thinks he's got away from the troubles of life for a little break, he's faced with this. And they skimmed Turt across the lake. Who the fuck does that? Bastards. The point being, there is real intention in how this scene makes you feel. And that feeling is unsafe. These woods are not your friend. They're not Henry's friend. They are indifferent. And they could very well be hiding forces that want to hurt you. Henry went to the Shoshone in large part to get away from his obligations, from his duties, from his regrets. He wanted to get away from his real life, and he wanted no one relying on him. He wants to be unseen, unjudged, and he isn't the only one. but he's not going to get what he wants. A lot of Henry's time in the Shoshone goes unseen to the viewer. After the first few days, we start skimming through days like turtles over a pond. It's a wonder that we feel the connection and bond that we do to Henry and Delilah in such a short space of time, and when we're missing so much of their relationship. I think that's again a credit to how effective those early conversations were. Okay, let's talk about save rooms real quick. I know this video is a fucking roller coaster, zigzagging all over the place. Is that what roller coasters do? Do they zigzag? The only time I've been on a roller coaster was like this little kiddies one, and it was literally just a circle with a bump halfway through, and I cried. So anyway, save rooms and horror games go together like salt and pepper. They have been a staple of the genre and of the gaming industry since its very early days, made popular by the Resident Evil series. In those days, saving was a precious resource. Go back to the medieval days of gaming, you couldn't save at all. And then Legend of Zelda came in and saved our ass, and as gaming evolved, saving became less and less of a rarity and a luxury, to the point where now if you don't have your game saved for you every 15 seconds, it's annoying as fuck. Save rooms have been this way of balancing the difficulty of a video game with the tedium and the frustration of having to replay chunks of it when you die, when you screw up. You know, dying is sure meant to be punished, but it's a pain in the ass when you die and you have to replay the entire fucking game. No thank you. You get to a save room and nothing can hurt you. Monsters can't get in. They're locked outside on some Wingardium Leviosa shit, leaving you to take a moment to relax, to breathe, to maybe craft and sort out your inventory, do some tidying up. These are almost always accompanied by some beautiful, beautiful music. Shout out Resi7, best save room music. I don't care. I'll batter you. 01633. Entering a save room feels like being enveloped in a warm hug from your nan. Nothing bad can happen to you. The monsters may be at the door, but they're not getting in. After being chased non-stop, maybe running out of ammo and healing items, it literally feels like a weight is being lifted off of you. Lost 22 kilos this year. Now, cast your mind back to the day in the game where the June fire began, or the Flapjack fire, the Brexit monument, whatever you want to call it. You stare out of your tower towards this enormous ball of flame, only getting bigger and bigger as it extends out to the forest. That beast ain't going nowhere. Try throwing a bucket of water at that bad boy, good luck. You fucking see this guy? But you're calm. You're talking to Delilah about booze and family. You might be a few miles from each other. Normally it might as well be 100 miles from each other. But you actually couldn't be closer. You're both here. You're as together as you can be, and you feel safe. There's no danger or fear to this scene. The monsters are literally at the door. You can see them there knocking. They ain't getting in. There's nothing to worry about here. No troubles. I suspect Henry feels this kind of feeling for most of the game whenever he's talking to Delilah. Like, yeah, being out in the middle of the woods with no one else around will make anyone feel vulnerable, but there's nothing like someone you love to make you feel like you're untouchable. I'm talking any love, you know, platonic, romantic, bromo-erotic, whatever floats your boat. Happy Pride. It's kind of like the workbenches in The Last of Us, you know, so you're not allowed to use the workbenches when you're in combat. Like if they're there and you can use them, it means that the area is safe. So as long as that button is there, you know that there's no threat around. Until there is. In probably the most chilling moment in the game, in my opinion, Henry finds a clipboard upon which there are transcripts and notes of his entire relationship with Delilah, going back through their entire summer, conversations that they've had, discussions, notes about them, who they are as people, all overheard by a person within radio range, even closer seemingly, because it was left minutes away from Henry's tower. You never had privacy, secrecy. You haven't been safe this whole time. The monsters didn't break down the door. They were in the room before you were. That feeling of vulnerability only gets stronger and stronger as the story unfolds. You still have a bit of a mental barrier that you can hide behind after finding this clipboard. You might think like, oh, maybe finding the clipboard made them panic and made them run, and they don't want to observe you anymore. Maybe whatever they were doing is so important that they have to back off in fear of getting caught. Or maybe it's not important enough and they think that getting caught is such a big risk that they've gone and run off and they're no longer listening.
Did you just cough?
No. Did you just cough?
No.
Oh, fuck.
Fuck.
It's entirely possible that there's not a single scene in the game between you picking up your radio and leaving the Shoshone where you aren't being listened to or observed in some way. That feeling of being watched. Maybe there wasn't some monster in the bushes tailing you from your 6 o'clock this whole time, but there was always a fly on the wall, and it might as well have been a monster. You start to see suspicion in everything. Seeds of doubt and paranoia have grown into bushes in which something might be hiding. Go check YouTube or Reddit. It's filled with people who believe that Delilah is holding some big secret and she shouldn't be trusted either, and the game kind of leans into this as well. It doesn't want you to trust Delilah. But getting real, there is a monster in the game. Right from the moment you press new game all the way up until that final chat with Delilah in her tower. You're always running from it, and it's always chasing you, and every other character in the game for that matter. It's not such a conventional monster, like the creepy dog-looking fucker from Amnesia, or the pig creature from Amnesia, or Turt, but it is very much present, pun intended. Henry, as well as everyone else in that forest, is running from his past, his life and his problems. This is the most terrifying beast. It never runs out of stamina. It never gets bored. It always knows where you are. And no matter how much running you do, you'll never put any more distance between it. But if you let it catch up when you've been running from it, it can drive you insane. His troubles are some 440-ish miles away, according to Google, but they are still right there with him. They're knocking on his tower door. They're infiltrating his dreams. You can try and run from your problems and your real life as much as you want, but you're never going to put distance between you. They will always be there with you. It's part of the trouble of this whole escapism thing, no matter how alluring and often very nice it can be. Throughout the game, you can find a series of letters in the storage cache boxes. They're a series of letters between these other two lookouts, Ron and Dave, and it's basically telling this little side story of unreciprocated love. This lookout Dave seemingly has feelings for this other lookout Ron, but Ron doesn't feel those feelings for Dave. It's a tale as old as time, really, and for Dave, he's gone out to these woods not just to hide from the other people in his life, but to hide from himself. You know, to hide from a family that might not accept him, a society that almost definitely doesn't accept him. It's Midwestern America in the 1980s, you know. Even in 2024, he'd have a troubling time, for fuck's sake. He gets into a bar fight while he's out here and gets beaten up, very likely because of his sexuality. You know, it's not a stretch to believe that. He finds a close friend in Ron and wants to talk about these feelings that he's having and talk about the difficulties he's having in life, but Ron wants the opposite. He wants to completely ignore his problems. He wants to basically pretend they don't exist. He's out there to avoid real life and just have a good time, you know? Get sloshed, get wasted, get shit hammered, whatever you want to call it. This forest is not magic. It's not gonna protect you from the outside world, and it's certainly not gonna protect you from yourself. As the dust settles, or in this game's case, the smoke rises and the narrative is reaching its crescendo, tensions are at an all-time high, and they are very soon to come crumbling so very far down. Henry digs deeper into the mystery and only gets further from the truth, and more questions pop up without answers to to accompany them. After finding a monitoring station in the woods filled with notes and documents and evidence on this examination, this experimentation that's been going on with Henry and Delilah, and in a stroke of genius, Henry decides to not take a single sheet of paper. He's lured away from his tower by a mysterious signal on his signal receiver, the beep beep machine. Obviously he goes after it. He's not going to not indulge in his curiosity. We as players aren't going to not indulge in that curiosity. And when we find the source of the signal, it's a backpack with a key attached, the key to cave 452, the locked cave from earlier in the game where you sang Toto. As well as the backpack and the key, there's also an alarm rigged up to go off once the backpack has been lifted. Now, that alarm isn't just to make Henry shit his pants, you know, epic prank in the woods. It's also the start of the intruder's final countdown to get out of the lookout tower where he is currently while that backpack's being looted. Side note, you can get back to the tower in time so that you're looking at it when Delilah tells you that she can see someone in the tower, which means that the only possible explanations for him to be able to escape are teleportation, Rico Rodriguez wingsuit, Just Cause crossover, or he's one of those, what are they called? Like they're evolved hamster fuckers. You know the ones. You're now being framed for the fire, for the arson at the monitoring station. This is a moment that, to be honest, sent quite a chill down my spine the first time I played it. You know, you feel so close to finally getting answers. You know, you're uncovering this mystery, and just when you feel like you might be getting the upper hand, this opposing force reminds you of your place. There's this moment in the TV show From. Great show, terrible name, pain in the ass to Google. It's a horror show with some really great moments. It's not perfect, but it is a lot of fun, especially in the horror aspect. There's this moment in the finale of the first season of the show. Look away now and go watch the show if you can. I mean, don't do it like right now. I need the watch time for the algorithm. Thank you. The townsfolk, the people who are inhabiting this town that is the centerpiece of the show, have come from all over the country and impossibly all ended up at this town from different areas in the country. And every time they try to leave, they impossibly end up back in the town. Like, they'll drive out of it, they'll end up arriving back where they came in. You know, it doesn't make sense. Same with walking, running, everything. They've tried it. Stop trying to be smart ass. No communication with the outside world, no understanding of what's going on with them, and to top it all off, there are these horrifying mimic shapeshifter creatures populating the town that tend to come out at night. Now, come the end of the first season, they believe that they can build a makeshift radio that could potentially make contact with the outside world, with the world outside of the town, which they failed to do so far. After a lot of difficulties, politics, hardships, they finally get this radio station built, and they're putting it together under some really rough weather. The man of the hour, the sort of main guy behind this radio plan, Jim, our boy Jim, is manning it while his wife, back at their assigned home in the town, is digging underground because she's got a hint that there's something underground that can help them make sense of the town. This truly feels like a climactic moment where, after all of the struggles and deaths and hardships that the town has been through, they're finally going to move forward even just a little bit. They're going to be able to communicate with the outside world and possibly as well be able to understand the town a bit more. They might understand the creatures that are imposing on them and causing even more terror for the town too. And then this happens.
Mayday! Is anybody out there? Does anybody read me? This is an SOS call. Mayday.
Oh, Jim, we need to stop!
Fuck! All right,
Hello? Hello? Is there someone there?
Yes, we're here. Oh my God, you have no idea. Jesus. Listen, we don't have very much time. Where are you?
Whoa, slow down. Is this Jim?
Sorry, what?
Jim Matthews?
Who is this?
Your wife shouldn't be digging that hole, Jim.
Watch my kids. Watch my kids!
This one exchange ignited my goosebumps properly and made me smile from ear to ear like those creatures at the same time, because it is such a great execution and example of one of those key foundations of horror that I mentioned earlier: powerlessness. Finally, these folks had felt like they got the upper hand in some way. They felt like they had overtaken the monsters in some way. They learned something that the monsters didn't want them to do. They were in charge for once, only to find out that not only did they not have the upper hand, but the entity was in front of them the whole time. And the fact that they thought they had the upper hand was laughable to the entity. That is terrifying and beautiful in TV form as well, and I just love that moment so much. You can literally hear the smile in the voice on the radio as it teases our buddy Jim. Fucking great scene. Props to the writer, Michael Reeves, I think. Beyond this scene, a lot more shit goes down in the show. Plenty more questions than answers at the moment. We're not getting a lot of answers, which I quite love. I'm having a great time with it. Back to Firewatch though, I felt a kind of similar emotional journey that those from fucks felt during my experience in Two Forks Tower, especially the later days of the series. We're getting close, we're understanding things a bit more. You know, even if we don't understand why these things are happening to Henry and Delilah, we at least have a better image of what is happening to them. It could be chalked up to observation, a social experiment. Creepy and invasive, absolutely, but dangerous to their safety, not really. And then there's a present on Henry's door, and suddenly their safety, both now and for the future of their entire lives, is thrown into question. Or better yet, that safety was never there to begin with. The June fire and the Wapiti Station fire continue to burn until they merge up with each other and start burning the forest down entirely, leaving Henry and Delilah without their hiding spot, leaving them with only themselves. But we still haven't uncovered the mystery yet. Thankfully, our insatiable desire for unraveling the mystery of math science history is shared by our two protagonists. We need to get into that cave. So I recently played this game with my dad in one sitting, of course. Luckily, he's a fan of the channel, and I wanted him to experience this game so that when he watched this video, he could experience it as it's intended. He's a gamer himself, having started mainly from around 2020 after going Rambo through 2 heart attacks. But he sticks to games like Call of Duty and The Last of Us, and doesn't really have the patience for a walking simulator. I don't know, maybe if Henry had a sawn off or something. So I went around and I did the movement while he sort of watched as a spectator, kind of like a movie. And that playthrough pointed out things to me about the game and about the story that I hadn't really considered before, or at least not recently. One, my dad is a major fucking conspiracy theorist. From the very first frame of the game right up until the end of the credits, he was firing them out like a full auto. I think at one point he was blaming Brian for the surveillance. I don't fucking know. 3, Delilah is properly portrayed as an untrustworthy and suspicious character to the unseasoned player. It's mad how much the game wants you to distrust her, and he very much did. Like, he didn't trust her all the way up until the end. I think I remember him saying, what if she cuts the cable car? 1, this is a player's game. It is a proper game. I know a lot of people seem to think that this is a story belongs in a different medium, like a movie or something, but I couldn't disagree more for reasons that I'll touch more on later. But for now, I'll just say that this is an excellent example of games as an art form. It's designed to mess with your feelings, to make you feel different things. It'll make you happy, sad, angry, emotional, disappointed, and some of those would be failings by the developers had they not been entirely intentional. But also, a secret fourth thing. I think that watching me in particular play the game reduced a bit of that scariness of the game, that horror aspect, and I think it leans a lot into the powerlessness side of it. He was watching me play, right? Master of the Shoshone. It's true, I got the badge. I knew where to go for the different missions and things like that. He commented a few times, how am I going across the map and across the park, having checking my map so very few times. It's because I've played it more than a few times and I know where to go. It also means that I know what's going to happen in the story, so I know when shit's about to go down, which means I know when shit's not about to go down. I know when there's monsters in the bushes, which means I know when there's not monsters in the bushes. And that shit comes through on controller body language. So Henry goes into the cave from earlier, cave 452, vivaciously slams the key in with the power of 12 gods and heads inside. Now, this scene is immediately made creepy by the sound design and the atmosphere around, and it's immediately made scary then when the door slams shut behind you and locks. Now, it's not just scary because you're alone now, it's scary for a few other things. One, the person who was following you and wanted you to come to this cave was following you very closely and has now locked you inside. Two, you're now cut off from Delilah completely for the first time in the game. That's your lifeline, your safe space. For the first time in the game, no one can hear you scream. You venture into the cave, and other than a misplaced Jordan, there's nothing particularly scary inside there. You loop back around to the cave and come out to this clearing that's full of some like wholesome, cutesy, nerdy shit.
Don't look at that. That's nerd stuff. What do you think this is? Firewatch is a happy, cheerful game? No, read the title, you ding-dong dipshit. You think this is for nerds?
You head back in and harrowingly discover the answer to a mystery that you weren't really focusing on. You might have forgotten it by this point in the game. The disappearance of Brian Goodwin. He tragically died in a climbing accident a few years prior, and he's been rotting at the bottom of the cave ever since. Are you doing a backflip in the middle of the shot when I'm talking about a dead kid? It's not necessarily the answer that you were looking for. It's not the mystery that you were hoping to unravel, but it does definitely serve to bring us back down to reality and remind us of real life. These woods, the wilderness, it's not your friend. It's indifferent. Henry heads out of the cave and gives the news to Delilah about what he found inside, and she immediately and understandably sort of takes the weight on her own shoulders. Like, I'll be honest, if I did what she did or didn't do what she didn't do, I could see myself taking part of that blame as well. But let's be real, it wasn't her fault, you know, it's just a mix of Ned Goodwin's dumbassery and just pure shit luck. I didn't expect to talk through / recap so much of the game, but William Shakespeare said that when you're writing a script, you sit in the passenger seat and let the pen do the driving while you pick the music. So we're gonna do it for Billy. Plus, we're pretty much at the end of the game, so fuck it. After this chat with Delilah, we move on to the final day, day 79. Nearly 3 months.
After this chat with Delilah, we move on to the final day, day 79, nearly 3 months into the depths of the forest. Sorry about that, right?
Nearly 3 months in the depths of the forest are about to come to an end, not necessarily because you want to go home, but because nature at this point is quite literally forcing you out. A natural fire and a maybe not so natural fire, depending on your definition,
Murder's a natural cause.
are coming together and bringing this whole area down. Not that Henry and Delilah would particularly want to stick around after the trauma of the summer and the day before's revelation. But we still gotta know the answers, we the players. We need to figure out who this mysterious third party is and what their scheme is about before everything burns to ash. We need to dig deeper than ever before, and oh, it was Ned. You wanted us to find out before we left. Well, it can't have been him behind all of it. What about the notes over at Wapiti Station about manipulation? What about the mysterious figure from the first day? That was him too. He was just trying to get us to back off so we didn't find out about Brian's accident. This can't be the answer. What about the government experiment? What about Area 51? What about Jesus fucking Christ, Turt, how do you keep coming back? We have spent the last few hours building up this conspiracy in our minds, and this is the answer? Just an asshole dad who didn't want his failures to be discovered?
That is a letdown. That is an anticlimax. But at least now we can put the summer behind us and go meet Delilah. You know, she's been on the other end of a radio this whole time. It'll be nice to meet her in person and we could do with some cheering up. Oh, for fuck's sake! So that's it. That's it. We go and meet Delilah and she's not there. It's just a shit dad, there's no conspiracy, and then roll credits. Maybe the most horrific part of this game is the idea that I just wasted all my fucking time. I feel let down. I feel disappointed. The ending has failed the game because I'm feeling these feelings. But has it? A lot of people, a lot of players, a lot of the internet feel like Firewatch's ending is the biggest failure of the game. But how can it be a failure if the feelings that you feel when you're going through it are exactly what the developers wanted you to feel? If the writers wanted you happy and cheering, holding hands as you were airlifted out of the forest, yeah, they fucking failed. But that's not what they wanted. It's very obvious that it's not what they wanted. They want you to feel pulled away from the fantasy. They want you to struggle with the reality of what's happening here, and they want you to feel bad about going back to real life. Are you fucking toes in my shot?
Should be.
They want you to face the theme of the game, because this is a game about escapism, that alluring warm blanket. It's about escaping life, that most terrifying agile creature. You may have noticed that throughout the video I've been going back and forth between referring to Henry in the first and the third person. You know, Henry climbed the rocks, you talked to Delilah. This isn't because of shit writing. There's a whole lot of other things on the channel you can use for that. But it is very much intentional. I wanted to do that because of the game. By the end of the game, if you've bonded with it enough, you should feel like you've been intertwined with Henry. And I don't just mean twiddling the joystick, whoa. I mean, you think the way that he does. Betrayed, confused, paranoid, scared, and ultimately disappointed. I think that Henry and Delilah, just as much as the player, want there to be some big, giant revelation through the story. They want something that's larger than life and crazy. You know, it ends in a quick time boss battle with the government to stop them from being turned into drones, whatever the fuck. Because if there was something else to focus on, something to move towards and unravel, something to always be looking at, then they wouldn't have to look back at the monster that's been chasing them this whole time. Escapism is something that we all do sometimes. I know that gaming has saved my life, not just because of the great memories that it's given me, but because of the times that it allowed me to ignore earlier in life when some more shit stuff was going down, you know, during my worst times, and it made me happy to be awake. My mum was diagnosed with breast cancer towards the end of 2020. As I'm sure you can imagine, just made an already very shit year infinitely worse, you know? The world, it's hard to explain. It's like the world got a lot smaller, and it was kind of like I was suddenly standing on a tightrope between two skyscrapers thousands of feet in the air. You know, suddenly I was Philippe Petit, and I expected to come soaring down at any second. You know, I'd gone from turning 18 the year before and finishing college and having the whole world be so massive and open and opportunity just being absolutely everywhere, to suddenly facing the very real possibility of losing the most important person in my life. I became a carer soon after that, and basically just kind of gave up on college. Like my last day was a few days after the diagnosis. I didn't like formally give up or anything. I just stopped showing up. My mates though, my boys, my family, my tutors as well in college, everyone was just exceptional at this time. Like they really were the best. I can't help them enough for how much they helped and offered to help. But by nature, there isn't really anything you can do or you can say to someone to make them feel any better about the situation that they're in. You know, that's no diminishment to anything that they did at all. I am appreciative of them every time I go to sleep. What you can do though is turn away. You can definitely do that. You know, face something else that isn't your fears and anxieties and your current troubles, and face literally anything else, and give that thing your full attention until your troubles don't even have space to occupy in your brain. And that thing that I gave my attention to, quite a lot of attention to, is video games. My mum's health wasn't showing up as a factor in Valheim, which I logged like 100 hours into within about a month, which I don't think I've done that for any game before or since. Valheim's amazing, by the way. The troubles didn't show up when I was mowing down youngsters in Halo 3 SWAT, racking up Kilimanjaros like the fucking MVP I am. Face me in Guardian, I dare you. And they definitely didn't show up when I was watching Ted Lasso Season 1 for the 12th time. That number is not an exaggeration, and it's gone up since. I could recite that show to you. But ultimately, those monsters never stopped chasing me as I ran away from them, and that fear only grew and grew. And when things got hard, I wasn't prepared enough to deal with that because I'd been ignoring it for so long. I only got more worried, and that terror only grew. Like, it's like if you manage to like matrix your way through social interactions for 3 or 4 years or something and never get a cold, once you finally do get a cold, and you will, your body isn't going to be in a position to handle that easily. So while everyone else gets over their cold in a few days, you're going to be knocked on your ass while your body figures out how to deal with it, because it didn't have that preparation before. It's just as much the case with reality. If you don't face it, you're never going to know how to face it, you know? Because those other people learned to deal with it while you didn't. Smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. Cringe. What I'm getting at is, life is a horrible fucking boss battle, and if all you ever do is turn and run, then you're never going to learn how to deal with it and how to fight it. So what you actually need to do is turn around, draw your sword, look the fucker in the eye, and let it hurt you, so you can learn how to deal with it, how to roll with the punches and get the upper hand. Henry, Delilah, and you are disappointed, I know, because you've been glued to the screen for the last few hours in the wilderness of Wyoming, to this thrilling, unraveling mystery, and to the warmth of an unjudging friend. We wanted this mystery to be something amazing, something that you don't see in real life, because the last thing we want to see right now is real life. We want it to be something else, because real life is the thing that we've been avoiding this whole time in the cover of the trees. But in reality, sometimes things are just shit for the most unsexy, unmysterious, drab reasons. They're just shit. Not only do these trees not hide you from reality, they're no escape at all. Reality is right here. The horrors and traumas of everyday life are right here in nature, rotting at the bottom of a cave, singing between letters, between lookouts. I'm running out of things to say, and this video is looking like it's going to be around double the length that I'd hoped it would be. But I just want to return to the essence of the video real quick before signing off. Liam's got a... Fucking hell! Can you get that back for me, bro? I need that.
Yeah,
I need it. Thanks, bro. As I said, this isn't a through and through horror game. I'm not trying to convince anyone of that. It does just share so much DNA with the genre and tiptoes onto its border in a way that I really admire and appreciate. I want to make games one day, and this is exactly the type of project that I would love to work on. It's beautiful, it's got heart, it's got something to say, or at least discuss, and it also keeps this feeling of unease with you throughout. Like it really resonates on that mental level. Any other game, they could have wrapped it up with a neat bow. Henry and Delilah hold hands as they board the chopper together to start a new life together, and the message would be that running away from your problems will lead to great opportunities, and it's always a good thing to do. That's a shit message. When I said earlier that this is a great example of games being art, I meant that it's a wonderful example of a piece that will affect your feelings and play with your mind whether you want it to or not. Not all art is meant to make you feel good. God knows. I've had art pieces, I've had paintings that have made me angry. Like, what the fuck is that? But then it's made me think in my head, like, how is this art? Ironically, kind of proving the point. Firewatch took me on this emotional journey, and it really did play with my mind. And I did, like everyone else, feel that kind of disappointment at the end. And it retroactively made the rest of the story, I don't know, less interesting, just shallower. But then came the first sign of this being a piece of art. It didn't leave my brain for like weeks. This 2 or 3 hour experience pitched a tent in my noggin for weeks, for months, and it's still in there years later. I'll always remember that initial reaction pointed out to me, without me maybe even noticing at first, that I was running away. You more than likely do a bit of running away yourself. You might be doing it right now. You just spent about half hour listening to a Welsh events organizer chat shit about a video game. You're a grown adult. Go do your taxes. A fi ofnadwy. Dwi'n bwyta teth. I want you to know that I really do understand that urge to escape and run away from life sometimes. It's not really the right thing to do, but you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who wouldn't do the exact same thing. I recommend, if you have the time or if you get the chance, to do another playthrough of Firewatch, but right from the off, consider it a horror game, even like a light horror game. And I reckon your perspective on a lot of the choices made behind the scenes will change a little. This video was originally born as a pitch for Lock On 007s, the gaming journal from Lost in Cult. They're amazing. I've got number 5 and I've backed number 6 coming up. They're really amazing. Everything Lost in Cult does is really, really impressive. I'd love to still work for them one day, but ultimately this project in particular felt like it would be better suited in video form. But yeah, who knows what the future holds. It would be amazing to work with those guys.
Quick interruption here from future Dan. It's just gone. It's 2:19 a.m. on the 11th of July. Interesting thing about the 11th of July is that it's my birthday, so I'm just finishing up this edit on my birthday. It was going to be, I was aiming for it to be ready at the end of June, but shit got in the way, like a lot of shit, like a large mound of shit, like that Jurassic Park scene where he goes, that's a lot of shit. As I turn 23, I'm reminded that the channel is entering its 12th year, I think. I've just had a quick check, and the first video posted here, I would have been 10, nearly 11 going on, and now I've just turned 23, which is quite funny and weird, and definitely not at all sending me into an existential spiral. At no point in any of those years was there a community around the channel. It was never really an intention. I mean, when we were like 12, yeah, sure, we thought like we're gonna be YouTubers, but that dream faded quickly. And since then, I've used it for stuff like video compilations, the first set of 60-second reviews and stuff back in the day, just as kind of like creative exercise, you know, without the intention of having an audience behind it. But now this year, mainly thanks to the Tommy project, The Last of Us Unbroken, which I'm quite proud of, and I'm really so unbelievably honored that people are really enjoying too. There's a lot of eyes on the channel, more than ever by far, and I'm able to pop into the comments and have chats with you guys, and you know, we're having these back and forth conversations, and names are popping up repeatedly in videos and uploads. Like I'm seeing returning people in the comments, which like it warms my heart in a way that I can't really explain. So I just want to say thank you very much for that, and I really do hope that you stick around, because there's a big pipeline of stuff that I've got planned. There's a whiteboard just off camera that's got like a few months worth of content planned that I'm already writing away with, and I'm very excited to get around, because it's more creative exercises, but a bit of fun, you know, in the vein of this, but talking about different games, different ideas. So mainly what I want to say in this ramble before I go to bed and then render this in the morning, hopefully to go up on my birthday, is thank you so much for being here. And I know all the YouTubers say that, thank you for being here, and it's kind of like it's kind of empty, it's kind of null, you don't really feel anything to it. But if you're watching this now, it means that already, not soon to come, but already you've made an impact and a difference to me. So I will be thankful for that forever.
Next video next month, we're going to be going back to discussing The Last of Us. Fucking again, I know I don't want to be a Last of Us YouTuber, but it's fucking going that way. I'm going to be talking about how me and my dad played those games, number 1 and part 2, his experiences, the highs and the lows, the arguments and the agreements, the chaos of it all. And it'll be good fun. I'm excited to make it. Also, I've got a coffee now because I'm a broke motherfucker. So if you've got a spare quid left over from buying your 3rd yacht in Alicante, it would go a long way to making the channel a better place. But don't even look at the button. Don't even think about the button if you would miss that quid whatsoever. All right? That knock on the door at the end of the world was a woman, and she wanted to know if you pay the electric bill in your house and you've got a minute to chat. That's absolutely fine, and they're still great productions, but if you only ever saw those first 15 minutes, those images and those questions would stick in your head for a whole lot longer. Can you fuck off?